Hello, everyone. I'm Cassandra Michael, founder of Heal Anxious Attachment, the Hub. I'm excited to introduce Shlomit Sanders, a licensed marriage and family therapist serving individuals and couples in New York and New Jersey, as well as online. With a blend of insight, clarity, and humor, she helps people navigate anxiety, relationships, communication, stress, and parenting. Guided by the pillars of education and empowerment, Shlomit supports her clients in understanding their patterns and making intentional choices that lead to greater peace and confidence. Today, we're going to be speaking about parenting with anxiety and how to break the cycle. Hello, Shlomit. How are you doing today?
Hi, I'm good. Thanks for having me here. I'm excited to be joining everyone today.
You're very welcome. And this is such an important topic, right? I know many parents with anxious attachment potentially feel guilty or ashamed. How common is it for anxiety to show up in parenting, and why is it important to talk about it?
Yeah, so it's extremely common. I think, I would say one of the biggest things that shows up both in personal and professional life, right, is that I hear a lot of self-doubt when it comes to parenting, right? Parenting obviously does not come with any kind of guide when a kid is born. And so we're all just out here doing our best. And so it's really important to try and normalize, right, some of the unknowns, some of the stressors that come with it.
And what are some of the ways that anxiety shows up in parenting on a day to day basis?
Yeah, so there's so many ways that anxiety can shows up, right? One of the things that I would say is really interesting to note is that anxiety can often look and feel differently for different people, right? So there really is no one size fits all. I would say one of the biggest indicators, right, is a lot of self-doubt, right? Questioning whether we are doing the right thing. And honestly, any parent that's listening in could probably raise their hand and go, that's me. Because we all have self-doubt when it comes to raising our kids. I would say that the biggest indicator though is how does it impact our functioning, right? Does it keep us up at night, questioning our choices and decisions? Is it leading to friction in our relationship? Arguing about it maybe with our parents or siblings or taking it to social media to try and get answers. Those I would say are probably one of the biggest or some of the biggest indicators of beyond the typical floundering in terms of not really knowing what they're doing versus seeking a lot of reassurance and validation from so many external sources about it.
And how do you think the child experiences the self doubt?
So, one of the biggest ways I think that it comes out from what I've seen is when parents try to involve their kids in some of the decisions or choices more than is recommended. So, what does that mean, right? In any choice and decision that we make as a parent, how much are we involving our kids in the day to day of what's going on, right? So, for example, if a parent is trying to discipline their child, right? Oftentimes, how is that done with the child? Is it done with, are you okay with that? Or is it okay if we don't have ice cream after dinner tonight, right? A lot of it is really in the tone and in the nation in terms of how it's being explained to the child. And obviously, that's going to very much depend on the child's age. And so, for a lot of this, the self doubt really shows up as insecurity. A lot of these kids grow up with a big sense of insecurity and anxiety themselves, if that is how it's exhibited between the parent and the child.
And would you say it also manifests as micromanaging, that you have parents that are sort of helicopter parents, right? They're micromanaging their children. And then in turn, maybe the child does not cultivate the sense of confidence and resilience that they can go out in the world and do what they need to do.
Yeah, absolutely. That's such a great point, right? To the point of micromanaging, I would say one of the biggest indicators for a parent that struggles with anxiety is the inability to self-regulate as a parent, right? One of the biggest markers that I often see is kids who struggle, and we all struggle, right? So for example, they're trying to do a puzzle and they're frustrated that they can't do it, or they're trying to sit and do homework and they can't figure it out at the first try, right? Naturally, these are things that kids are learning as they grow. And for a lot of the parents with anxiety, if you as a parent are all of a sudden feeling this tension in your body and you're kind of going like this and you run away run to your child and go, let me show you how to do it, right? Let me fix it. Let me do it, right? Let's do that puzzle, as opposed to taking the opposite thing of, yeah, that is really frustrating that you can't finish the puzzle, right? How can we figure this out,
Hmm.
right? Or how about mommy sits with you and we can figure it out together,
Like that.
right?
And
So
then
to
the
your point,
child will cultivate that sense of agency, right? That, and the confidence that they can complete tasks and go out in the world and do what they need to do.
well, yes, but I would say beyond that, one of the biggest concerning markers for a child that grows up that way is what happens is that their brain ends up interpreting stressful situations as bad or
Hmm.
wrong. Because if mom or dad are freaking out when child is freaking out,
Hmm.
and again, we're talking about the most minimal, regular situations day to day, right? Their clothes don't fit on them, or they can't find the clothes they like, or they got the food that they didn't want, right? There are a million situations throughout the day. And a big part of that is how do parents react to that? If we as the parents are stressed out about it, right, the indirect message that the child gets is, oh, this is bad,
Hmm.
right? If I'm stressed, mom is stressed. If I'm angry, dad is angry, right?
Hmm.
There's no room for growth from a child's perspective. There's no room for figuring things out. Mistakes are not okay, right? This is how the brain interprets those behaviors and actions. And what ends up happening is that a child that grows into adolescence and into adulthood struggles significantly with learning how to trust themselves, how to
Hmm.
trust their emotions, how to navigate the world and the stressors that come on a day-to-day basis as adults. And so if we don't set that acknowledgement or validation early on, right, the child doesn't know that it's okay, that these are normal reactions, normal responses, frustrations, aggravations, agitations. These are all very normal part of the emotional spectrum that we deal with.
And so, what do you suggest that parents should do in this situation? So, let's say a child is frustrated with something, and the child's trying to, like you said, complete a puzzle or do their homework, and they're not managing. What is your recommended approach here?
Yeah. So first and foremost, right, I really recommend for parent to just pause, right? Just pause for a moment. Take a deep breath. Think about if you feel your body sort of tensing up in that moment because your child is calling your name or you can hear in their tone that they're frustrated. Check your own body language first as a parent, right? If you maybe need to take a moment to catch your breath. Drink a glass of water. What happens is that if you're not immediately running to the child, then you can learn how to modulate your own emotions, your own responses, your own reactions, right? Because one of the most important things to do as a parent is learning when something is a big deal versus not a big deal, right? Meaning, if something is an emergency, absolutely drop everything and run to your child, right? There is zero need to sort of self-regulate, so to speak, right? Within those parameters in that moment. But if every subsequent situation brings upon the same level of response and reaction as if it's an emergency, right? And all reactions and responses look the same, feel the same, or experience the same way, the child won't know to be able to differentiate between regular, normal, typical, and his body going, oh, this is an emergency,
Hmm.
right? And so the way the parent responds is how the kid is going to learn the appropriate responses.
Yeah, I love that. And so, you spoke about nervous system regulation, and that is super important in this scenario, right? And how we manage triggers and the behavior that we're modeling to our children. And what are some ways that parents can learn to regulate their nervous systems and show up in a more calm and grounded way when parenting?
Yeah. And first of all, let me just start and say parenting is not easy. It's really not, right? And the goal here is never perfection in any capacity, right? If you can learn how to regulate yourself even once, I would call that a win. I would call that success. So I think for me, first and foremost, right, if we're talking about how to regulate our bodies, is pay attention to yourself. Pay attention to how does it feel in your body when you are sitting on the couch watching your kids play? How does it feel in your body when you're cooking in the kitchen or knowing your kids are in the other room? How does it feel when you're sitting and playing with your kids? The more you learn about your own ability to kind of breathe and regulate when everything sort of is typical, regular, pleasant around you, right? The more you will learn what are some of your triggers, right? What are some of those areas in which all of a sudden you feel your body tense or, your ears perk up, right? Because one of the really interesting things is that when a baby is born, they actually have different types of cries for different things. And if you pay real close attention, you can actually know before even going to your baby what those cries mean, what your child needs before you even go there,
Okay.
right? And for me, I like to think of this even as the child grows up, right? If you get to pay more attention maybe to your child's pitch, to your child's tone, right? You can kind of start gauging, is that really an emergency or can my kid figure this out? Right? What happens if I don't respond right away, right? And depending on the children's age, their abilities, their understanding, right? It's a very much case by case situation. But I would say, first and foremost, for the parent to just start collecting data for themselves, right? To just pay attention to what's going on within their own bodies first.
So step number one would be just cultivating that mindfulness, right? And awareness of self, how they're feeling. Okay. So let's say they've managed that. They know what they're feeling. They're in touch with their bodies. What would another step be? Step two, to regulate those intense emotions or triggers when they come up.
Yeah, so that's a great question. It would really, I find that it depends on the person's personality, situation, what's going on, right? So definitely the context makes a big difference. But I think honestly, for them to even just pause, right? Kind of take a moment and the parent, one of the biggest things that I often tell parents is find a mantra that works for you. If you find yourself kind of getting into a back and forth negotiation with a child, for example. Let's say you are debating how many shows the kids can watch, right? Or, another scoop of ice cream or whatever it is. I find that one of the best mantras to kind of help the parent is to say something to themselves along the line of, I'm the parent, I'm in charge, I'm the adult in the room, I'm in charge. And what happens all of a sudden is that sometimes saying something like that can really help refocus what it is that's going on for you, right? So, for example, one of the typical, scenarios is during dinner time, busiest rush, typically when I speak with moms, right? Is one kid is screaming, one kid is hungry, there's utter chaos in the house. And it's so easy as the parent to get caught up in that and to feel stressed and to scream at the kids. And dinner is ready and I'm trying to cook and there's so much going on. And I find that if you just take a moment and say something like, okay, I'm the mom, I'm in charge. What do I want this evening to look like? What do I want this evening to feel like? And all of a sudden there can be this recentered thing of, okay, child A, put your shoes away. Child B, set the table. Child C, go get drinks, right? All of a sudden, somebody has a little job to do. Everyone's coming to the dinner table, right? And all of a sudden, the scene is completely transformed from chaos to clarity,
Mm-hmm.
to everyone understands what their expectations are of them, right? Everyone has a job, everyone has a role, and mom can feel a little bit calmer in the utter chaos that typically ensues during that time.
Yeah, I love that. That's very helpful. Um, and so, what are some ways that kids might pick up on a parent's anxiety, even if the parent thinks they're hiding it well?
Do you mean as a child or when they maybe grow up?
As a child, yeah. Because I think children are very much attuned to their parents' nervous system, right? So even if we think that we've got things under control, we don't want to show the kid that we're maybe, edge or experience anxiety, does the child still pick up on that?
I would say it's very much dependent on the child's age, developmental marker, level of understanding. There definitely is that level of attunement with the child and a parent to pick up if mom is stressed or dad might seem irritated or angry or upset or something like that. I do find that one of the biggest markers though could be a parent over explaining a choice or decision that a parent already made,
Mm-hmm.
right? If a child perhaps is being given too many options, right? So, for example, I'm sure that a lot of viewers can understand this is when we grew up, right, watching TV, what we turned on the TV was what was on the TV. You had commercials, there was nothing you can do about it. You had to sit through the commercials, right? And now when you have all these different streamlined options, right? So children they get to watch things on loop. They don't really experience commercials like we do. They don't
Mm-hmm.
really experience needing to wait.
Delayed gratification.
Absolutely. Absolutely, right? So what happens in an example like that is that's something if the child doesn't learn how to do that even from that scenario, right? Then how can we expect the child to maybe wait when you're trying to speak with your spouse or partner? And they're going to continuously interrupt
Mm-hmm.
because understanding that they need to wait or patience, if we don't teach that or implement that in other ways, right? They're not going to understand what it means or what that looks like or what that even feels like. And right. And speaking of choices, the same thing with television. They have 1,000 options of what to choose, what time to start it, what time to end it. Do they need to pause it because they need to use the bathroom, right? It's an overload on a child system. Whereas, for example, depending on the age, I often tell parents, offer 2 shows. That's it. You can choose show A, show B. That's your option for today. Maybe tomorrow might be different, right? But simplify making choices for them, helping them be able to reach that decision-making process.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing I really also recommend with that is find something that there is a waiting period, right? Even if it's live TV and I think it's, 90 seconds of commercial, right? I know that my child will often scream, I don't want to wait. I want an episode right away. And I would say, you'll be fine. Just sit and wait. The show is going to come back in a minute, right?
Mm-hmm.
But helping them learn how to tolerate those uncomfortable feelings, right? There's a period of almost that awkwardness of we just sit and watch the screen until our show comes back.
Mm-hmm.
And I really think that we need to start restoring that in kids today.
And is that just teaching them how to sit with the discomfort or just be patient and wait? Is that what we're cultivating?
Yeah, yeah. Teaching them how to be patient, teaching them that they are capable of tolerating distressing or uncomfortable emotions. Even in that small moment,
Mm-hmm.
that is what they're doing. We as parents are showing them, I believe in you. I know
Mm-hmm.
you can handle this.
Yeah. I think that's very important, right? To learn how to be with uncomfortable emotions, to sit with the discomfort. And are there any other ways that we can encourage our children to practice this and model this behavior?
I mean, I think it's widely known today that kids copy what they see at home. So thinking a lot about our relationship with our own phones, right? How much are we on that? How much are we paying attention to our kids when they try to get our attention or talk to us? Are we making eye contact with them? Are we answering them, right? If we're on a phone call, do we tell them, give me 2 minutes and I'll be with you, right? How much are we modeling what we want to see in them as they grow up and start to have relationships with their phones or other digital media use?
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of that, I think, is going to take some self-awareness. It's not an easy thing to do because we all have a very strong relationship and connection to our phones and other media uses. But I think that for a lot of parents, starting to think about what do your kids see? If I were to interview your child today, what would they tell me they see at home when they try to get mommy and daddy's attention? And that's something that can be a real eye opener for parents.
Hmm.
right? Is in 10 years, when my kid gets a cell phone on his own, what is he going to learn from our home? What is that going to look like in 10 years from now for him or her?
Yeah, 100%. I also like the notion from, I think it's from aware parenting, where you don't try and, if your child is crying, it's not immediately like, oh, what can I do to stop the child from crying? It's more like welcoming those emotions and being like, hey, did you have a tough day today? I know what you're feeling. Must be really hard. Just like validating the child's experience and letting the child, yeah, have those emotions without having to step in immediately and change them. I don't know if you're familiar with that approach.
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely an approach to take, right? I think anytime you can have an honest conversation with your child, regardless of their age, and help them talk through their emotions and normalizing it, validating it, absolutely, that makes such a huge difference in cultivating that emotions are normal, right? That they should be experienced, they should be felt. It's okay to talk about them. It's okay to learn how to deal with them.
Exactly, because I think often, maybe especially in our generation, it was like, you were a good girl when you were being agreeable and happy, right? And that was celebrated. Whereas when there was maybe crying or anger or frustration, that was deemed as bad. And so I think really shifting that can make a big difference. And that also applies to us, right? When we're regulating our nervous system. And, can we extend compassion to ourselves and welcome all of our emotions, both good and bad? Yeah.
Yeah,
So I think that goes
absolutely.
both ways, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, listen, there is nothing in the world that will teach you that is a greater mirror for how you deal with things until you have a child. Right? There is just no greater wake-up call than that. And to your point, it's a very challenging thing to do. It is. As I said, it's not easy to be a parent, and one of those is the raw honesty that we honestly have to have with ourselves sometimes, right? That discomfort of how am I taking care of myself as the adult?
Mhm. 100%. And when we're speaking about anxious attachment, how else does having that attachment style manifest in parenting?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So, one of the biggest hallmarks, right? And let me preface this and say that it's completely normal to an extent to want to be liked by everyone that we're surrounded by. But one of the biggest hallmarks with anxiety is people pleasing. And
Mhm.
that sometimes extends to our kids, right? We don't want, not only do we not want them to be upset, we definitely don't want them to be upset with us. We don't want them mad at us. We don't want them not liking us. We don't want them hating us. And this extends to all the ages, that notion, that idea. And so what happens is we can go into people pleasing mode sometimes even with our children. Right? Of, okay, shh, don't cry. Like it's okay, it's okay. We'll figure this out. Or maybe don't tell daddy I gave you an extra scoop of ice cream, or however that might result, right? For you as the parent of just wanting to stop the crying of the child, right? It could be because as the parent, it's uncomfortable when our children cry, right? It's that ability for ourselves to tolerate distressing or uncomfortable emotions, right? And so there is a lot of people pleasing that comes with it. There is doubt. There is asking your children for their input or opinion where it's truly inappropriate to do so, right? Um, so there are quite a number of markers I would say that go with how do you as the parent sort of compensate for when your child is upset? And once you're able to navigate that question, I think that that can really give some folks a clear understanding of, is this the kind of parent you want to be?
Mhm.
Right? Is this what's important to you? Because it's so easy to get caught up in that cycle. Right? A child cries, a child is upset, we right away want to fix it. We want them to feel better. Right? Trying to fix it does not make you a bad parent. It doesn't.
Mhm. Yeah. So, what you said around people pleasing, right? That's such an important topic. And it's interesting how it manifests around our children as well. So, why do you think parents struggle to set boundaries with their kids?
Yeah, boundaries, rules. These are some of my favorite topics because it can be incredibly difficult and frankly tiring to do. In all sincerity, it's a hard job to do, right? To not only set rules, but to uphold them, to
Mhm.
be consistent with them is a very challenging thing to do, especially because sometimes it frankly is just easier to let things go a lot of the times. But what happens is that when we become inconsistent with the rules that we set, our child learns it's okay to get away with it. It's
Mhm.
okay to not do this. But I think maybe the important concept that perhaps parents don't understand how that translates later on when they're adults in my work that I have seen is that adults learn to not trust that parent. They have trouble trusting that parent. And the second thing is they don't end up respecting that parent.
Mhm. Yeah.
And that's a very tough pill to swallow because if you rewind that and say the parent's intention is good, right? You have good intentions as a parent. You don't want to punish your child for doing something, or maybe you didn't agree with punishing them, but you knew that that was the best thing that needed to happen in that moment, right? It's very, very easy to forgo that, right? And let them go and go, okay, but don't do it again, right? Or if every time you make empty threats and go, okay, well, this time I'm really going to take away your phone, but then don't do
Mhm.
that. Okay, but this time is really the last time, and then I'm really going to take away your phone. Or this time I'm really going to take away your toy, right? And then they don't do that, right? What happens is that it cultivates this element of the child believing that they can't trust their parent. If they say they're going to do something and not do it, there's no follow through, then there's no aspect of reliability. Then they can't rely on or depend on this parent. And that evolves over time in different ways for a child.
Yeah, that's very important. And also, boundaries create a sense of safety, right, for the child. And this also applies in adult relationships, right? When we know what somebody's limits are or how they would like us to show up for them, how they want to be loved, it creates a sense of direction in the relationship, which feels like safety. And it's the same for a child, right? Boundaries create a sense of containment, I think. This is allowed, this is not allowed, this is okay, this is not okay.
Yeah. I'm so glad you shared that because this is such an important topic to think about, right? So let me give you a scenario for you and the viewers to think about for a moment, right? Imagine you're at work and your boss comes over to your desk and says, you can show up tomorrow, whatever time you want. About that upcoming deadline, you can either submit it or don't submit it. About that other meeting, by the way, if you feel like showing up, that's fine. You don't really have to. Don't even worry about it. But we want you to show up. But it's okay if you don't show up. Right? And just imagine for a moment, right, is that employee sitting there going, so what time do I come tomorrow? Should I go to that meeting? Do I do this? When's the deadline for this project? Right? Or what should I do now? Who do I talk to? What's going on? They're in that scenario. I imagine that some of you, we probably even perhaps experienced a bout of anxiety just at that idea of lack of clarity
Mhm.
over your expectations at work, right? Over a lack of direction, over a lack of clarity in terms of this is what you're hired for, this is your role, this is what you expect, these are your hours. I'll see you at the quarterly review, right? And a lot of that really translates, right, to your point, to children as well, right? Imagine growing up in a household where there are no rules, where there is no expectation over how the child speaks to the parent, over the responsibility or perhaps chores at home, over discipline, right? Much like this chaotic boss that goes, do you feel like doing that? That's cool. You don't want to do that? That's fine, right? And so I think it can be quite anxiety provoking for the child to not have a sense of structure,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Or
Mhm.
clarity over direction of this
Mhm.
is what mom and dad expect of me, right?
Yeah.
This is what my job is at home. This is my role. This is how I talk to mom and dad. This is how I don't. This is what happens when I do X. This is what happens when I don't do Y, right? Rules absolutely make us feel safe.
Mhm.
And there are rules everywhere we go, driving on the streets, in school, at work, in a supermarket. Right? There are rules that govern us everywhere we go, but the rules really have to start at home.
Yeah, 100%. And so, like, creating that mental shift can potentially help parents, right? Instead of them seeing that, oh, when they set boundaries, they're super strict or rigid, that they say, okay, I'm setting these boundaries and this makes my child feel safe and contained.
Exactly. Absolutely. It's a great way to repeat that, right? Speaking of mantras, is my job is to keep my child safe. And one of the ways to keep them safe is for them to understand what I want from them, what I expect from them, right? To convey it with clarity, to convey it with a sense of confidence.
And this also mitigates anxiety, right?
Absolutely. That absolutely mitigates anxiety. Yes. When there are a clear set of directions and expectations, right? The child has zero confusion over who's in charge at home. And that is truly the goal of being confident as a parent is providing that with your child, providing that to your child.
Yeah, I love that. All right. And what does it look like when a parent begins healing their anxious attachment? How does the parent child relationship shift?
A beautiful thing happens, which is the parent actually starts enjoying interactions with their child. There's a sense of peace to dealing with your kids, not just chaos or confusion or stress or aggravation. It doesn't mean that it's going to become perfect, but there's an internal shift for a parent that when you learn how to parent with confidence rather than with anxiety or fear, you feel differently about yourself. Your relationship with your own partner improves and changes. Your relationship with your children change, right? And that can really help form a secure attachment with your child, which is all of our goals, right, as people, is to create and have and hold secure attachments, right? When that self doubt starts to fade, when the voice of confidence becomes stronger than that voice of self doubt, right? And so the child will, it creates calmness and clarity in the home rather than chaos,
Hmm.
which is probably one of the most important things that I would say any parent really wants, let alone children.
And this is also foundational for cultivating a secure attachment within the child, right?
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. When children grow with parameters and rules and adherence to those rules, that is precisely the foundation of secure attachment, right? And that significantly impacts the child's ability to have healthy relationships with
Hmm.
other people as they get older, not even their friends in school, but it impacts and carries with them as they grow up as well.
And I think when we're speaking about secure attachment, it's really, having a regulated nervous system, being able to set healthy boundaries, knowing that, the child can count on their caregivers to be there. They can count on their love and support and attention, that their needs are being met, right? Um, yeah, and it's just so important that, yeah, the more the parent is able to show up in those healthy ways with a regulated nervous system, being able to set healthy boundaries, being present with their emotions, with their child. Yeah, that creates that ripple effect. And yeah, ultimately creating a secure attachment for the child as well.
Yeah, not easy work, but very much worth it.
Yeah, so just wrapping up, if you could speak directly to a parent struggling with anxiety right now, what message of hope would you want them to hear?
Yeah. So if you are struggling with anxiety, you are not a bad parent. It does not mean that you do not love your child. It does not mean that you're not meant to be a parent. It just means that you're struggling. There is help out there. There's no shortage of solid, good therapists or coaches that can help teach you how to become the parent that you want to become. And that is absolutely going to change your life.
That right. Thank you so much, Shlomit, for this beautiful conversation. So, if this conversation resonated and you would like some support on your healing journey as a parent, you can reach out to Shlomit and you can find her contact details on the website healanxiousattachment.com. Thank you so much for this beautiful conversation.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it.
So did I. It was really nice to be here. Truly, just it's hard being a parent, and I think the more we normalize and validate that to ourselves, I think that is already a good place already to start, right? Just giving ourselves some compassion.
Yes.
So thanks for having me here.
You're very welcome. Have a beautiful day.
You too.